In this section, we are going to take a look at perceiving and understanding words. So this will touch on all three of those first elements: comprehension, speech production, and representation. So first, a definition. The lexicon is all of the words a person understands. So as an infant, you are learning all types of words, and when you're perhaps a 2-year-old toddler, you might know only 100 words in your lexicon that might include mom, dad, and cookie, for example. As we get older, our lexicon grows, and as we develop the ability to learn new languages, it also increases our lexicon. There are 2 units of language that we're going to talk about. A phoneme is the shortest segment of speech, and if you change it, it changes the meaning of the word. So in this example, they show you bit, and the 3 phonemes are b, I, and t. This is what we learn in phonetics. So you may have had this in school when you were in elementary school. This is a very simple phoneme example. You could also imagine that there are more complex phonemes like th, which could be th sound, or sh, which would be the sh sound. And it also changes based on whether it's a hard or soft vowel. There's a lot more to it, but we're only going to look right now at the fact that the phoneme is the shortest segment of speech. Now, a morpheme is the smallest unit of a language that has meaning. So, for example, phonemes do not have meaning necessarily if they're looked at individually. So if you heard b, I, or t, you would not necessarily assign meaning to that. So a morpheme is the smallest of unit that has that meaning. For example, there are multiple meanings of the word wave. So you can think of an ocean wave, you can think of waving to someone, you can also think of doing the wave in a crowd, but each of them have meaning and they are a morpheme. I am going to go through a couple of studies. One effect that is related to perceiving and understanding words is called phonemic restoration effect. So in this example, you'll see this participant is hearing met with their respective legislatures. There's a cough sound over the S. So that S is not heard, but because this person has context and he has experience in the world, he is able to fill in the missing phoneme. So the phoneme here is S, as in legislatures, and it is blocked with the cough. So phonemic restoration effect means that we can fill in the blanks if we have context. So again, we've been talking a lot about experience in the class and how experience is important for cognition. This is just another example. So speech segmentation is about how we break up our speech. So you'll hear even in my speech patterns, occasionally I take breaks. That would be a speech segment. For speech segmentation, context is important, and we have to understand what the meaning is and also what the sounds and syntax rules are. This is related to statistical learning, meaning that we average these effects. So for example, you can tell that I am asking a question when I say, "How was your day?" Because my sound increases at the end of the sentence, and that's a rule that we learn about sounds and the meaning of words. So over time, our experience allows us to interpret speech segments properly. Another effect that we will look at is called the word superiority effect. So this example on the right here shows you 3 different presentations. The first is the word fork. The second is just a letter K. And the bottom is a non-word, RFOK. When these were presented to participants, they would then have to choose which letter was in that position. So which was the fourth letter presented, for example, or where it was the only one, which was it there. When that K was presented in the word, there was a faster reaction time than either the word alone or the non-word. So we are able to say that when we are able to anchor something to a word, that helps us to have a faster reaction time and a better memory for those letters. So that is the word superiority effect. Also, with understanding words, there are three things here we'll discuss. Two of them are tasks. So the lexical decision task would require that a participant read a list of words and non-words. And what happens as these appear, if the word is frequently presented, then the reaction time will be much higher. So say you are looking at a list, you're looking at presented words on the screen, and the word butter continues to come up. The first time you see the word, it might take you a second to make the decision that it is a word and not a non-word. But then the more that you see that word appear, you're able to respond to it more quickly. The same thing we talked about eye tracking in the previous chapter. So eye movements can be tracked while you're reading those words. And participants look at low frequency words longer. So not only is reaction time slower, but the eye tracking is also longer. This happens a good amount to us when we are reading longer passages, for example. Lexical ambiguity is the term for when words have more than one meaning. So we already talked about wave and how wave can have different meanings. In a previous chapter, we also talked about that task that had people respond to the phrase, they threw stones at the bank, right? And they had to decide what the bank was. Was it a river bank or was it a financial institution? So when words have more than one meaning, it's important to have context. So again, here we are with experience being a very important part of understanding words. There are two types of dominance when we're talking about this lexical ambiguity. So again, words that are the same but have different meanings could have biased dominance or balanced dominance. Biased dominance is when one is more frequently used than the other. So when we talked about throwing stones at the bank, the stones, because they're more closely associated typically with a riverbank, might come to mind, but a financial institution is the more common use of bank. So that has biased dominance. Balanced dominance is when two or more meanings have about the same dominance. So wave, the ocean wave, and wave, the greeting, have about the same dominance. That is balanced dominance. So there was an experiment about this, of course, and the psychologists determined that reaction time was slower when there was biased dominance. So the top one is showing that there are two meanings of cast. You could be cast in a play, like a theater production, or you could have a cast that is plaster and it's helping a bone grow back. That is balanced dominance, and reaction time was about the same for both. Tin, however, tin as a container of food is much less frequently used than tin as a metal. So reaction time was much faster to tin as a metal. So this is just showing, I'll go back here again, it's just showing that the biased dominance really does impact our ability to understand words and to interpret them correctly. And we have to have context to be able to make those decisions about words. We will next move on to understanding sentences.